There are different things I think that an OVI defense lawyer should know when it comes to the basics of DUI, which we're just going to call OVI science. One of those things is field sobriety testing, and another one of those things is chemical testing for alcohol and drugs. Because most of our cases involve alcohol, I think it's also good to know about alcohol pharmacokinetics. And that's just a big word that means the absorption, distribution, and elimination of alcohol in the human body. So let's talk about alcohol. Alcohol is the term we generally use, but really what we're talking about is ethanol. It's one particular type of alcohol that's found in the drinks that we consume. And so ethanol, alcohol, we use those interchangeably today. It's a central nervous system depressant, and that means that it impairs vision, judgment, mental processing, concentration, reaction time, and psychomotor performance. And because it impairs those things, that means it impairs driving ability, or at least can impair driving ability, and that's why it's illegal to operate a vehicle under the influence of alcohol. So how is it absorbed and distributed and eliminated? Well, when it comes to absorption, about 20% of alcohol is absorbed through the linings of the stomach into the bloodstream, and approximately 80% is absorbed through the lining of the small intestines into the bloodstream. Scientists will generally tell you that it takes about 90 minutes from the last drink for the alcohol to be fully absorbed into the bloodstream. There are certainly some outliers that take longer, but that is what's generally considered the absorption time, in forensic science at least. When it comes to distribution, you can see, actually no, it's not on this slide. Distribution, it's once alcohol gets into the bloodstream, it's distributed to all the parts of the body, including the liver, the heart, the lungs, the brain. And what we're most concerned about, of course, are the brain and the lungs. We're concerned about the brain because all those impairing effects take place in the brain. And we're interested in the lungs because the most common way of measuring the alcohol concentration is the breath test. And so there's alcohol in the lungs that it is exhaled in the person's breath into the breath testing machine. And so that's why we're so interested in the lungs. You can see on this diagram here of alcohol exchange in the lungs, on the top right part, it says alveolus. And the alveolus or alveolar sacs are at the ends of the bronchial tubes. And you may recall bronchial tubes are kind of like the branches of a tree that keep getting smaller and smaller. Well, when they get to their smallest point at the very end are these alveolar sacs. Around the sacs are very thin blood vessels. And so that's the bottom right is a close-up of that. You can see the blood vessel going around the sac. Well, the blood vessel is so thin that it will allow for the carbon dioxide in the blood to go through that membrane into the lungs. It will also allow oxygen from the lungs to go through there into the bloodstream. So that's the carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange which takes place in the lungs. But those aren't the only two things that can be exchanged. Another one is alcohol. So alcohol in the bloodstream will go through that membrane into the alveolar sacs, and then the alcohol is present in the lungs and exhaled into the breath testing machine. So elimination of alcohol. This is certainly in the picture a unique way to do it. But what you need to know is 90% of alcohol is metabolized in the liver, which is why alcoholics have such liver problems. And about 10% is excreted. It's excreted using the same pathways that water takes. So that's urine, feces, breath, perspiration, and tears. And that's also why we test for alcohol in urine and breath. Although we do kind of test it through perspiration. If you've seen the SCRAM units, that's secure, remote, secure continuous remote alcohol monitoring. They're the ankle bracelet. That actually measures alcohol on the surface of the skin. And so that is a pathway other than urine or breath that alcohol is monitored. As far as I know, we've never measured alcohol in feces, although that would certainly make for a more interesting job for a police officer if we did that. Not going to sign up for that. The rookie is the one who gets that job. So that is elimination of alcohol. Here's a caveat though. That's all about alcohol. Drugs are different. So alcohol, if you can imagine a curve, maybe I should have put one up here, the curve of alcohol being absorbed and distributed and eliminated is pretty stable and gradual, like this, it's a bell-shaped curve basically, and it's very predictable. The same is not true with drugs. Drugs, the elimination rates are not constant and not predictable. And I don't think I mentioned with alcohol, absorption rates vary depending on many different factors, but elimination rates are pretty constant, considered to be about a 0.015 per hour. Yeah, that's not true with drugs. All drugs are different, and all drugs are not constant and predictable because they don't have what's called zero order kinetics. So what's on your screen is an example of THC. So this, the pink line is the THC level. And so you can see it goes up pretty fast. In fact, about a minute after a person smokes THC, it's different if it's, edible, but for those who smoke, about a minute after the smoking stops, the THC level reaches a peak. And that's pretty fast. But what's interesting is it also goes down pretty fast. You can see that probably about 80% is gone within a half an hour, and then the rest is gone pretty quickly. But again, it's not totally predictable. But what's interesting here on this slide is you can see the blue line and the green line. And the blue line is what the smokers in this study reported as their subjective feeling high. And you can also see their performance on psychomotor tests in the green line. And neither their subjective high nor their performance was correlated with the THC level. THC level was way high at the beginning, and by the time they were feeling it and performing poorly, it was really low. So that's just an example of how the pharmacokinetics of drugs are different than alcohol. So here we have a slide that makes me laugh every time. It kind of makes me laugh because I'm hoping that even though we're going through this very quickly, and even though it is science, and maybe most of you aren't scientists like me, it's not family law. When I was starting my own practice, I said to my wife, I think I can make this work. And she said, well, if you can't get enough criminal and OVI cases, maybe you could do some divorces and dissolutions. I'm like, no way. I will deliver pizzas before I do family law. And so this slide really represents my impression of family law. I'm glad to not be part of it.